I think we should begin. I'm told this is an hour's lecture, and there are quite a few things to cover, and I'm hoping that we will make this as interactive as possible. Therefore, we should have quite a bit of time to discuss. Can you once again confirm that you can hear me by either raising your hands or unmuting and responding? Yes.
You are loud and clear.
Thank you very much. And I'm informed that this is being recorded, so I'm sure you'll all be able to get the recorded copies of this lecture.
Thank you.
Right. So we would like to go through academic and professional writing. And this unit of your research and innovation module aims to equip you with the skills of scholarly writing, which is also often called academic writing, acknowledging that there are discipline-specific aspects to this. To enable you to construct and develop core arguments with clear understanding of their significances, their strengths and weaknesses. And these arguments, as we'll discuss later, will appear in various parts of your writings. The unit also aims to equip you with skills to be able to express your opinions logically and convincingly for either assessment or for pure dissemination and communication of your work. So you must be able also to understand the basics of editing, proofreading, and so forth. But more importantly, also about the structure of your writing. To whom are you writing, for what purpose, and what is there for the relevant structure. And these structures will depend on your disciplines. I must also at the forefront here say that this is a lot that is demanded by this unit and cannot be given all in this one lecture. So what I've done is essentially to focus on the key principles and concepts around academic and professional writing instead of going into the details of each of the core elements of academic writing and professional writing. So this lecture will essentially give you the idea of what is expected of your writing in your undergraduate studies. And also to emphasize that the consistent use of the strategies and skills highlighted here will improve the quality of your writing, but this is dependent on you continuing to explore around writing. So also the strategies and skills that we discuss here are applicable in general to all types of assignments that you will encounter, be it an essay, be it a research proposal, a research report, and so forth. But of course, there will be the discipline-specific aspects and specific formatting requirements and specific tones and so forth, as we'll discuss later. And remember that your disciplines and lecturers will have different expectations and preferences sometimes from what I'm saying, because what I'm saying is fairly generic. So you will need to understand your discipline or subject area specific requirements for your writing, as well as pay attention to what your lecturers, your mentors will ask of you. But very critical, writing is a process. Writing is something you have to learn over time. it requires your ability to recall, to identify, examine, and explain certain things. So the culture of reading is fundamental if you are to achieve effective writing skills. So what is it that we write in academia and even within our organizations, which speaks to the professional aspect of writing? So we write all kinds of things. I've just listed here a few of them, which could be essays, dissertations, theses, or other assignments. It could be research proposals. I know most of our programs here will require you to do some form of research, and therefore you will need to write proposals. You need to write the reports, the research reports. You may also be required to write technical documents, for example, standard operating procedures for some of you who are mainly in biological sciences space. And then you also write internal and external communication within your organization, within your departments, within your units. This includes emails, letters, memos, and so forth. And further, with specific reference to research, you will be writing manuscripts for publications, and therefore you will need to go into the details of scientific writing itself or manuscript writing. And remember, we want to contribute to improvement of society through policy and practice, and therefore there is also issues of policy briefs that are needed to be written, issues of looking for funding, which are grant proposals. So there's a lot of writing that you will do as both as a student and for those who will get into the academic profession will also be required to have this broad and relatively deeper understanding of the various writings that we do in academia. So what is academic writing? There are various definitions, but to sum it up, it's basically communicating ideas, information, and even research to your wider academic community. And two major forms of this. One is for you as students, you are going to be writing works that will form part of your assessment at the university. And once you are done your research, for example, you may also want to go ahead and publish this. So you are getting into the more expert realms of academia, issues of scientific writing. And therefore you are writing for publication in a journal, in a book, and so forth. But the principles are basically the same, and the standards are the same for these two approaches to writing. As for professional writing, often you will read in the literature, some will say professional academic writing, some will say academic professional writing, which is a fusion of both the academic writing and the professional writing. But you will also see distinct aspects of professional writing, which is any type of writing whose purpose is to facilitate the work of a business or an organization and relates to internal and external communication or audiences who will be recipients of your writings. So examples are CVs that we share, bio sketches, email messages, letters, memos, and reports. And for this lecture, I'll focus primarily on the academic writing. But just for us to understand a bit more about academic versus professional writing, there are issues of format. There are some slight differences and similarities in the two aspects of writing, academic and professional. Academic writing is often guided for particular disciplines, and we'll talk about this later on. And conventional paragraphs and paragraphing structures is often encouraged, and with minimal use of bullet points. You are also expected to use a consistent font throughout. Where you bold or italic, it's essentially to highlight certain things, but most often in section headings. And it's fundamental that you have citations or references, because as we will discuss later, academic writing is based on the evidence that you are going to produce to buttress your argument. And you may have specific requirements about your submissions, for example, double-spaced, justified, and so forth. Whereas in professional writing, you can get away with use of bulleted lists. You can use bold fonts on the italics for emphasis, and you could put lots of tables, charts, and so forth. Whereas in academic writing, you will use the same, but often the numbers and so forth are generally restricted. You then may not necessarily put in a list of the resources that you use. You may, but it's not a strict requirement. And often single-spaced, e.g., as we are writing memos, emails, and so forth, you don't want to double-space those. In terms of the style of presentation, academic writing is very discipline-specific in terms of the jargon. For example, if you are in humanities, social sciences, you have your jargon in there. If you are in medical sciences, you are in there. If you are in engineering, you have your specific jargon that you use. Whereas professional writing tends to avoid discipline-specific jargon. You always include, as we said, your scholarly sources, and you would favor the third-person point of view instead of saying, I did this, and so forth. But in some journals nowadays, they are beginning to encourage that in particular, but generally use the third-person point of view, and obviously use your active voice. So you need to develop your academic writing works in a very structured way, so that you are able to clearly demonstrate the logic that is within your arguments, with the clarity that is required and the appropriate tone. So often in academic writings, you'd have a fully developed introduction and a fully developed body of your writing, as well as your conclusion. On the contrary, in professional writing, it's usually the first-person point of view, where you are declaring, I'm writing this to do this, this, this. And sentences are very direct and concise. The paragraphs brief and very focused, and you have very brief introductions and conclusions. So the style, format, purposes of academic and professional writing have general differences and fairly specific differences as well. Now, let's focus on academic writing. Firstly, you need to say, why am I writing? To whom am I writing? What, when, and where? So these are things that we need to consider. Who is the writing intended for? What is the intent of that document that you are writing? Is there a deadline for submission? For what reason are you writing this? Which links to the intent of that document? Where is the document going? Which links to the who? And also how are you going to disseminate, distribute, share that document? All this will inform you as you start putting together the outline of your document, and as you already started thinking about the structure of that document, and what resources will inform you regarding the structure, tone, and so forth. So these are critical areas to think about before you delve into the writing itself. But so critical are these three when you start thinking about writing. One is the relevance. What is the relevance of what you are writing to the task that you have been given by your lecturer or to the question that you want to answer. And the second aspect is coherence. What you are writing must make sense to the reader because you have a target audience. And what you want is to communicate to this audience something of importance. So there must be a clear purpose, a clear direction. So you must always be writing with the reader in mind. So you must organize your writing and express your writing to the extent to which you think the reader will best appreciate and understand what you are communicating. And criticality is the third aspect. It's not just about describing something. It's the analytical and evaluative elements within your writing. And we'll speak of critical thinking and critical appraisal later on. So you need to put things into context. You need to buttress your argument. You need to explain your argument. You need to illustrate. So these are the three essentials of writing. There are many more, but I'm just highlighting these three. And we'll keep on repeating some of these. So what do we mean by criticality? We mean that you must be very clear about your position in relation to your topic. That's what's called the stance. So what do you think about your topic or your area of writing? And what do you want the reader to think about this topic? So what is the message that you are sending to the reader? And what will make them come alert, can they come alive to your thinking? Then the other aspect of critical writing is the argument itself. How are you presenting your argument? And for some of you, argument relates to the content. And for those who are writing, for example, a research proposal or a research report, it begins with you outlining in the introduction what it is you want to do research on, and then in your literature, where you are arguing about how you have arrived at the gap that you want to address or at the hypothesis that you want to prove. So argument is about organizing and expressing a viewpoint, but you must then be able to demonstrate very clear reasoning based on solid and convincing evidence. So you need to be immersed in your topic in terms of the literature, what is available, what resources have you consulted for you to express this viewpoint. The other critical aspect is the nuance. This is how you are going to state your viewpoint. So you want to acknowledge the strengths, the weaknesses, and the gray areas within your argument, and you also qualify any arguments using the existing literature. So you need to nuance it carefully. For example, you could be emphatic about something, but you fail to produce the relevant literature that supports that. So it means you have not nuanced appropriately. You are misleading the reader. So writing critically is fundamental in academia. So the features of academic writing will include these and several others. One is it's very formal. And this is what we meant about the structure. It has to be very objective. It must be evidence-based. And you need to be sure that you are precise with what you are stating and also accuracy. So precision and accuracy are different things, but speak of the same kind of focus. Precision is the ability to hit the same spot every time. Accuracy is able to target a certain area repeatedly, not necessarily exactly the same bullet. So you need both precision and accuracy. This means if you are writing, You don't want to state exactly the same thing differently in the same document that you are writing. It means you are shifting your precision. One thing that is clear about academic writing is it's fairly complex. You want to put together a lot of complex issues. So you need to learn the art of logic. So you need to present your things logically so that you are able to unbundle issues that are very complex, but present them in a logical way that reduces that complexity. You need to use the appropriate tone. And of course, you need to be as explicit as possible. So if you are describing, for example, the issue of a sexual encounter, you need to be very clear. Is this oral sex? Is this vaginal sex? Is this anal sex? So it has to be explicit. And then you need to understand the importance of hedging. This is where you are using words that enable people to understand that there's a possibility that this may not be exactly 100% truth. So it's the issues of may or suggests that and so forth. This is called the hedging because it allows you flexibility in terms of interpretation as well as even a recommendation. Unless you have absolute proof, then you can state so. And then, of course, is the issue of responsibility. You are responsible for what you put on paper. And that responsibility often carries you for life. Because this is where, if you do a writing, the responsibility is yours to make sure that it is in the appropriate structure, it is objective, you have enough evidence, so that if it's an assessment, whoever is assessing it will assess it appropriately. And critically, you need to plan on your writing works. You need to sit down and plan appropriately, and we'll discuss this in detail again just shortly. Now, in terms of writing style, in academic writing, you do not write as you would normally speak. So this is why we are going through this module, and in particular about scholarly writing and professional writing. You will realize that your writing will require you to do much more than you would do in speaking. And remember, when you are speaking to somebody, they are there, and you can always explain if they ask. But in writing, in our academic writing, our works must be able to satisfy the reader that you have provided adequate information, because you are not there to provide any additional information. So your writing must be complete on its own to be able to convey the message that you want the reader to understand. So we try to avoid informal languages such as slang or colloquialism or contractions. Contractions are the don't, it's, and so forth. So you should say do not, it is, instead of using those contractions. You want to structure your language carefully and using complete sentences and paragraphs. Again, we'll discuss that in a bit more detail later on. What is very important is also that you learn about the writing style in your discipline by looking at relevant sources from your discipline. And often these are textbooks, these are journals, and so forth, that are official sources and usually peer-reviewed sources that will enable you to understand and appreciate the writing style. Your effectiveness in academic writing styles will obviously improve the more you read and the more you practice. But as you are writing, remember, your reader is short of time. They have other urgent matters they want to attend to. And some of them may not have any knowledge concerning your professional jargon. So as you are writing, you want to be as coherent as possible and as brief as possible without losing the message. Some general rules as you are writing, keep it simple. So some will say, actually, the KISS, keep it short and simple. So justify whatever you are saying. Make no statement which is not based on facts and data. Quantify as far as possible, give the quantities that you get from the literature. Avoid issues of large, small, and so forth. Be precise and specific, so you are avoiding exaggeration. Inform, not impress. Again, don't exaggerate. So be consistent in the use of terms and tenses. So if you are using a past tense, keep to past tense. If you are using a certain term, use that term consistently. And if they are interchangeable, you might as well state right at the beginning that these are used interchangeably, with the aim of being very clear, logical, and systematic with your writing. If there are any questions, queries, clarifications, please just raise your hand or unmute and ask or comment. Now, this is just to emphasize what you have learned in your campus-wide courses, I think, on communication. It's just the use of English. Remember, we have the words, and then we have the sentences, and then when we have the paragraphs. These need to be very well structured in your academic writing, because that's what will bring the clarity and the coherence in your presentation of your literary works. So when you use these words, remember your audience. Who is your audience? So even if we are allowed to use jargon in our disciplines, remember that depending on who you want to target, you may have to tone down on the jargon. So write to express and not impress. Wherever possible, use ordinary words. For example, in our faculty, there are hospital-acquired infections, which is a fairly simple way of describing infection that you get when you are hospitalized, but somebody may want to use the word nosocomial. Whilst it is one word, it is very, very important that we understand to whom we are targeting our writing. The paragraph enables you, as you are all aware, to break up your text into sections with common content. And often you have the first sentence, which tells the topic of the paragraph. Then you have all other sentences that follow are illustrating and corresponding to that topic. And towards the end of that topic, you provide some bit of explanation. And this is the PIE, the point, the illustration, and the explanation that is often talked about in paragraphs. And then when you begin to see the topic changing, then it tells you this is now time for a new paragraph. This allows you to break your discussion into logical segments that build your argument together. Now, in terms of language, this is what somebody said. The jargon syndrome is characterized by the total omission of one-syllable words. And the writers with this kind of sickness will not use words like use anything. They will say they utilize. They avoid using the word do. They say perform, they perform. Instead of saying start, they say initiate. Instead of end, they say they finalize or they terminate. So you use a simple language. So again, people will, instead of saying subsequent to, why not just say after? Militate against, why not say it prohibit? At this point in time, why not say now? So what this is simply emphasizing is use the simplest and shortest possible words or descriptions within your language. This will make the reading much easier. What you don't want is for your reader to continually refer to your dictionary, which is either discipline specific or use the Oxford Dictionary to be looking up these words all the time. Now, the essentials of writing are that you are accurate. So you maintain credibility by providing correct information. The other is clarity. You avoid jargon, as we have said. You avoid ambiguity, avoid the use of irrelevant information. As an example, some people tend to use the former and the latter fairly commonly in their writings. These are examples. I will read. Please take care of my son and my cat while I am away. Be sure the former is in by 11 p.m. Let the latter stay out all night. So in this case, one has to struggle to think of what is the former and what is the latter. So is it the cat that you want to make sure is in by 11, or is it the son? So you try to avoid these kinds of writing where you say former and latter, and reduce ambiguity. This is another example in our discipline of health. This was about urine that was being collected to test for diabetes after an overnight fast. Innovation Hub, can we mute those, please? So a fasting urine specimen will be collected. This is very ambiguous. Can urine fast? Certainly no. It has been shown that. Why do you even have to say it has been shown that? Just tell us what has been shown. Avoid vague modifiers, most, many, and vague time references, recently, here. So these are just examples of some of the key things that you need to consider. We have already talked of consistency. Avoid use of different words for the same thing. And be aware of your tenses and be consistent with the format of your presentation. And brevity, please avoid irrelevant information. Avoid redundancy and unnecessary words. As you are writing, you want to emphasize certain key components of your argument. So you want to start with the clause you want to stress. For example, if it's about you in the context of education, Vive Zero, you developed a certain approach for doing certain things, you want to say 3 approaches were developed instead of putting the 3 approaches at the end, because what you want to emphasize is the development of those approaches. So in writing your literary works, you need to be positive. Try to avoid using words like unfairly, unfortunately, wrong, which are kind of moralistic. Avoid also negative connotation, unless where it is expressly necessary, cheap, ignorant, inflexible. Similarly, issue of gender sensitivity. Talk of chairperson, for example, not chairman. Some audiences can be easily offended with the way you are presenting, the tone in which you are presenting your arguments. And always follow instructions meticulously regarding the structure, format of your presentation, of your writing. These are examples of simplicity and being brief. For example, if you simple words like contemplate, magnitude, terminate, they are very simple words for this. Think, size, end. Unnecessary words at the present time. It's now. So if you were doing a word count and you were limited to 400 words for your assignment, it means if you write at the present time, you have 4 words there, you can reduce this to 1 word. Similarly, in the majority of instances, you can reduce the 5 words into 1 word, which is usually. Arrived at the conclusion can be simply concluded. What we mean by redundancy is people tend to become fairly verbose. In actual fact, it is apparent that. So all these things you want to avoid as you are writing your academic works. So writing in English is a problem. It's not our first language. So when you are preparing your writing, do not think about the English. It will distract you from putting down the essential things that you want. So until you have laid out the points that you need for each section of your paper, that is until you have an outline, you don't want to worry too much about the language, but you want to get very worried about your language when you have started writing, and after you have nearly finished the writing, you need to go back and do thorough editing in terms of language, your grammar, your spelling, and so forth. Now, as we get towards concluding this, and as I said, it's just highlighting the key principles and concepts, is now the writing process itself. How do we approach it? So academic writing starts with you thinking, and then you need to plan. And then you struggle through the process of putting together your content. And then you want to revise that content. And you may have to rewrite. Once you realize that this is not making much sense, you rewrite. So you are messing about, but eventually you want to end up with a product that is coherent, that is logically presented, that is clear enough for your audience to understand. Because what you want is for you to be able to tell your audience exactly what it is you want to say and how you have said it. All those will determine how your audience will receive your writing. So there's a lot to go into this. So you need time to brainstorm, you need time to consult, you need time to talk to your peers. You need time then to sit down and put together a strategy to be able to navigate through the writing process itself. So you want to choose a topic. So what determines that this topic is one that you must focus on is about the relevance of that topic, or have you been assigned that topic, or whatever. Once you have that topic, you want to research, to do some data gathering aspects. You want information that informs you about that topic so that you can easily build your argument around that topic. If it's an essay, if it's a research proposal, if it's a research report, or any other academic works, it needs to be buttressed by the relevant information. So you need to get immersed in your topic so that you can bring in the necessary evidence that can build your argument. And this, some of you may already have been exposed to literature review as a component of academic writing. You will need to go through an extensive literature review as part of your learning to do the writing, so that you are able to get useful information, valid information. And there's what's called the critical appraisal of the literature, which some of you may want to explore later on to build your argument. Once you have that, you want to do a pre-draft. Now you have fully crystallized your topic. You know what it is you want. You have the information around this topic. So you want to do a pre-draft. So this is about the planning that we talked about. You want to create an outline of your writing, of your document. You want to talk with others so you can strengthen that skeleton of your document. You want to generate more ideas. And then you also want to be looking out for the structure if it's not provided for, if it's an assignment. So you are putting together some notes. You start writing. When you start writing, you'll come up with your first draft. Some call it a zero draft, or some call it a sloppy copy. So you are getting all these ideas that you formulated in the pre-draft on paper. Then once you have that, you want to revise. And this is the heart of writing. It's about 10% writing and 90% rewriting. So you revise, you rewrite, you revise, you rewrite, and you are going through an iteration of these drafts. And perhaps by the third or fourth draft, you have a fairly solid literary works, which you will then get into a stage towards finalization, which is about editing. So once you have revised your document several times, you then want to do editing. And editing speaks to your grammar, speaks to your format, speaks to your logical flow, and so forth. So the editing is the kind of sanitizing of your document. And then you also look at the issues of format for your text as part of your discipline specific requirements, or a particular journal or a book, depending on why you are writing it and to whom. Always, if this is about your assessment, double check the assessment guidelines. And then in your final stages is proofreading. You have edited, you have formatted, you have double checked. You need to take a day or two away, put the document aside, and then get it and proofread. And as much as possible, get somebody else to do this proofreading for you. You'll be surprised how many silly mistakes your colleague will pick from your document as they are proofreading. And then once you have proofread, you can say, I have a final document that you need to share, which could be your essay, which you want to submit for marking. It could be your practical report from your practical session, or it could be your manuscript from your project, and so forth. So you then can share it within or outside your institution. So I'll emphasize again some areas within academic writing that you always need to subconsciously build into your writing skills. Is about clarity, it's about semantics, it's about conciseness, it's about using positive phrases. And this is just an example. What we mean by semantics is if you use the word buckle, it could be buckling of the belt, or it could be buckle of bending. If you use the word sanction, this could be prohibitive aspect, or it could be an approval. So you need to be very clear about the terms that you are using. And in terms of positive phrases, you want to be more affirmative than negative. That's what it basically means. For example, the experience was not altogether unpleasant. You would rather say the experience was somewhat pleasant. That sounds a bit more positive. And then there are the issues of coordination and subordination. And I'm just highlighting here subordination, which is joining two related ideas of unequal importance. For example, Tracy stopped to help the injured man. She would be late for work because of that. You can join those two, even though Tracy would be late for work, she stopped to help the injured man. So what you are saying, being late for work and stopping to help the injured man can be joined together in this subordination aspect. The other is the use of parallel structure, where you bring in together similar ideas. And then, of course, the issue of paragraph construction. So I will re-emphasize the importance of this as you are writing. Now, we come to the issue of referencing or citing. Academic works should be referenced. So there should be some kind of reference list or a bibliography at the end of your literary works. Why do we want this? One is we want to credit or acknowledge sources of information and ideas. It's also so that your reader can locate your sources for further information if they want to verify something or better understand your argument. You want to validate your arguments, but at the same time, that is also knowledge sharing within your area. And for you as a student, it also shows your intellectual immersion in your topic regarding the depth, the breadth, and the quality of your reading. So often we read literary works from students that show that they have not done serious reading because they have not cited some of the seminal works within the area of focus or within their topic. So you demonstrate this to your peers by being able to demonstrate that you have looked very actively for the most relevant literature within your area. In terms of referencing styles, there are several styles or citation styles that are used in the different disciplines. These have been developed by different professional organizations, but your discipline will stipulate which style to use, or a journal will stipulate which style you can use. There are several of them. I've highlighted some here: APA, Chicago, Harvard, Vancouver, MHRA, and so forth. You can visit these sites, and I'm sure you have already come across some of these referencing styles. But basically what these are telling you is who and which journal and what was the title. So basically that's what referencing styles will do, is to give you a snapshot of who published, where did they publish, and when. Now, there's the issue of integrity in academic writing. So academic writing is a commitment to a number of fundamental values. I just highlight some of them here. One is honesty. The second is trust, because people who read your academic work must trust that you are a good source of the information that you are providing. And therefore, you have also honestly represented the facts that you looked for in the literature. It's about fairness. You want to be able to share both positive and negative findings from your literature. It's about respect, and it's about responsibility. So you want to be able to provide a document that can be scrutinized for its validity, that can be scrutinized for its fairness, that can be scrutinized for its responsibility to academic writing principles. Having said that, it basically means there is potential for misconduct in academic writing. And again, here, I highlight some potential misconduct in academic writing. And I would like to believe of the 40 or so people here, and perhaps more who may be together on this, some of you have experienced or have seen this misconduct. One is cheating. Two is collusion, which basically means 2 or 3 of you may collude to produce one particular literary works, which somebody submits as their own. 3 is falsifying data. So you may realize that you have done your project, but it's not giving you the answers that you expected. And then you falsify data so that it speaks to your hypothesis. And then there is the issue of pure fabrication. Just putting your data in Excel when you have not done any experiment. And then there's the issue of purchasing work for assessment. You are given an assignment, and what you do is you pay somebody to do the work for you. And today there is the issue of artificial intelligence, where you ask the artificial intelligence platforms to write an essay for you. That is equivalent to purchasing work for assessment because it's not your work. There's the issue of ghosting, very similar to purchasing, where somebody else does this for you, whether it's artificial intelligence or whatever. And there's outright bribery, where a student will try to bribe a lecturer for favorable marks when they have not done well. And of course, the issue of plagiarism. And this can be self-plagiarism or other forms of plagiarism. This is why for most of your literary works as students, we now use our ephorus or Turnitin to check for plagiarism. So this is, in a nutshell, a bit about academic writing, the fundamentals of academic writing, the critical elements of academic writing. I have 1 or 2 slides on professional writing just to add on to the comparison that we did earlier on between academic and professional writing. So what do we talk about when we are talking of professional writing? What is it that we are writing? These are essentially formal letters, CVs, reporting and designing surveys, taking ideas from sources, comparison essays, discussion essays, and so forth. So there are a number of things, technical reports that we might want to share within your organization, emails, and so forth. So, sorry, there's one slide that is missing there. But anyway, so this is what you write. And there are different formats of CVs, depending on your disciplines, depending on the organization you want to send to. So professional writing is about writing to communicate within and outside your profession. What are the acceptable sources of information that you should use generally for both academic and professional writing? These are often peer-reviewed journals, which is why we now have lists of acceptable and unacceptable journals, which are often called predatory journals. Then there are books, and then there are online sources. or the online sources, you need to be careful where you are getting your information of. There are non-commercial, non-professional sites. There are things like Wikipedia and so forth. You want to avoid generally those, especially in academic writing. So you need to go to sites which are clear authorities on the area of interest. For example, those in health, you can go to the World Health Organization site, Centers for Disease Control, and so forth. So use reputable URLs, which are usually the EDUs, the GOV, the orgs, and so forth. And you can also use professional organizations, newsletters, blogs, and listservs. So be careful what you use. But depending again on discipline, you can even use other sources of media. For example, newspapers and so forth can be acceptable sources of information. So writing may seem like a very big problem, and indeed it is. But the main thing is to get started. The more you write, the easier it gets. And you can always reduce the volume later when you have the overall picture. So in the pre-draft and early draft, put the information that you think is relevant. But as you revise and rewrite, you then begin to tweak things, bring things together. As you strive for coherence, logical presentation, you realize a lot drops away as you build your argument more logically. So writing is a process. It requires planning, drafting, rereading, revising, and editing. You need to do self-review, peer review, and you can even get subject matter expert feedback if it's not an assignment, for example, if it's a manuscript. There are no shortcuts. Practice makes it perfect. And this is my last slide. Now, the key points in terms of the skills that you are expected to build within your context as students and eventually as you get into academia or your professions is about writing clarity and coherence. You learn this. It's about critical thinking. It's about research skills. It's about attention to detail. It's about time management. Remember earlier on we said, is there a deadline for submission? And often there is a deadline for submission of literary works. It's about the writing style. As you grow in the writing arena, you will learn to adapt to different writing styles. This takes time. It's about interpersonal skills. How do you hone your communication skills? Adaptability. How are you able to organize your literary works? It's about what can you do on your own. You need the independence of thought. And then, of course, you need to be continuously demonstrating curiosity. And this is the hallmark of an academic. It's curiosity, which drives you towards trying to do more and more literary works and reading around your particular areas of interest. I'll stop here and ask for comments and questions, if any. Please just unmute and say something. Prof. Gutsire.
Well, while we wait for questions and reactions from the students, I just want to say thank you very much, Prof. Gomo, for taking us through the scholarly writing and professional writing part module for the RIS university-wide training that we are doing for all our part 2 students in the Faculty of Medicine and Health Sciences. Thank you so much. You raised really, really key issues. The use of English, being simple, using simple language, avoiding semantics, the writing process, referencing, and also ethical issues in scholarly writing that our students need to really be aware of as they start their writing career, their research career. Plagiarism, falsifying data, and just misconduct in their conduct, when they do their research, and even in writing, outright lying. So yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'll stop there in case there's a student who wants to ask something. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you very much, Prof. And I can share these slides. I'll send you the slides in which I'll add the resources for reading, for additional reading.
Okay, thank you so much, Prof. And Mr. Edwin, Innovation Hub, you were able to capture Prof's presentation.
I was recording, so I'll share the recording. The same link that I sent, that's where I will put the recording. It's a folder which is online.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much. So we'll be able to share everything with the students. Thank you. Thank you very much, Prof. Gomo. If there are no, I'm not sure. I don't see any hand from the students.
No, just saw a message. Somebody say thank you, Prof. there. So that's fine. You're welcome.
Okay. Okay. You can go on and read the messages, Prof.
That's fine.
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
So over to you, Prof. Thank you very much. I'm done.
Okay, Prof. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. So thanks to those who managed to attend today. You get the recording for all the lectures. Please log in again tomorrow using the same link. We do have clinical trials with Dr. Stranix tomorrow, starting at 12. Please try to be punctual, log early. There are internet and network challenges. So if you start logging in 10 to, maybe we can all be in and have that lecture. Otherwise, enjoy your lunch. See you tomorrow. Bye.